Hello guys, welcome to Trade Conquest. I am going to go ahead and cover some initial and economy related information. And now first of all, in this game you do not start off as a ruler of a nation. Instead, you start off as an investor or a businessman or an economic strategist, however you want to see it. Now you have some different avatars, which is essentially your background of how you want to go into this. If you say, I want to start off as a humble farmer and build my wealth and become the ruler and then conquer nations, you can go ahead and say, I will be Farmer Joe and go with that. We're going to start with a trust fund baby since we start with more wealth, and I will need that so I can show some things. Welcome to Trade Conquest. You might want to read this information. The game also starts with a little bit of a tutorial with general information that you might want to go through that as well. In Trade Conquest, you do not just simply choose whichever nation you want from a drop-down menu. Why is that? Because being an investor is not that simple. First of all, the more important tabs you want to look at when you first start a game is the climate and the unrest map mode. Now, the climate, that is very important because all resources that you will be able to produce within the game is within a specific climate. Not all resources that you can find in a tropical climate will be found in a colder climate. That is very important because there are certain goods that require other goods to be produced from tier 3 onward. The unrest mode will tell you what provinces are dealing with unrest and instability. If you decide to build in a high unrest area, you might not have enough people for production. You have 5 slots in which you can build. The red icon indicates unrest. If you have high unrest and do not have enough workers, you will not be able to use the full potential of the province. And at first, you do not really have enough wealth to change all that. You can do that as the game progresses. Now, first of all, wealth is life. This is what this is supposed to mean. The icons are supposed to represent life. You will want to look for, let's say, provinces that ideally do not have red and try to build there. Now, once again, when it comes to climate, there are certain resources that you will see. For example, in a continental short climate, you will see certain resources like apples and potatoes that you will not see in an arid climate. For example, you will not see aloe or salt, or a tropical climate, which you will not see rubber or silk. Now, at the beginning of the game, you will have 12 resource options to choose from depending on your climate. Now, they will be randomized at the beginning of the game, so each playthrough will be different. So you cannot say, okay, I want to start in this specific province and I think that next playthrough I'm going to have the exact same resources. No, you will have to adjust depending on the availability of the resources. Yes, they will have general resources that only happen within those climates, but you will still have to adjust depending on what they are producing at the time. Okay, now let's say I want to build in Estonia because I've checked they have really good unrest. They are green or yellow, which is really good. Now I've checked the climate and I can deal with this. So I will go ahead and look into what they have. Okay, so they have sheep, they have cattle, they have wheat. We cannot produce any mining related resources because we require social research, which we do not start off. So we can do agriculture things. So let's say we have corn, lumber, goat, poultry. Okay, let's start with sheep. Something simple. Start with sheep, we can build 1 and notice the wealth going down. Let's say build sheep 2. And now from the sheep, I want to do, let's get into the clothing industry. Okay, so we do textile. The resource name we show here as well as the production cost. This is the initial cost. This is how much it will be producing per month. This is the base value. Now the value in which you sell the resources will change based on demand. This is the base monthly maintenance. The monthly maintenance will be affected by the inflation that it is in. The production can be affected by leveling up the resource or industry, or by laws or different things. The purchase cost will also be affected by inflation and taxes as well. The corporate taxes, which you can see up here, see that you have 19.4 inflation in Estonia and taxes are 20%. Once we build our first tier 1 resource, that means that this has become our home nation. This is how we choose our. Once we figured out, okay, I want to build in this province, that's when we are locked into that nation. We can build another textile, and then we will wait and see until they are done. Inflation is very important because it affects, like mentioned before, the cost of everything you produce, as well as the purchase cost of other things like investment. Cargo train projects and airport projects will decrease your transportation distance as well as your transportation cost. Each resource you produce will have a production amount. This production will have to be transported. The more you produce, the more you have to pay in transportation cost. The farther you are away from the capital, the more expensive it will be to transport those items. This will be the capital in this case. If you're going to be building something that has a lot of production, you might want to build it closer to the capital. Now, we do have all these other options that will help us throughout the game. Personal security and police funding will help us with unrest. The research lab will help us with research that we will need so that we can unlock other helpful things. And the warehouses you will definitely need so that you can increase your storage amount, so that you will be able to store as much resources as you can before you have to sell off to the market. Now, once you start producing your resource, you do not automatically sell what you have produced, what you have in storages. Instead, like I mentioned before, you hold them in your storages and then you go off to the market. Through the market tab, you can see what market you are. If you start off Estonia like I have, you will be in the EU market. Now, there are several markets and they are based off of real life regional market or trade. Now, when you go to the market and you have resources that you are producing, you will see what you are producing by the changing color. If you see this color, it's because you're supposed to be producing this resource. Now, you will see the changing cost of the resource on demand. That's why I mentioned before that the base value is what you will see here, the base value of the resource. And you can also see here the base value of the resource will be changed on the markets based on demand. If there's low demand, you will pay or you will gain less life than what you could get if you sell it at a high demand location. Now, there will be events that will be increasing the demand for the goods that you sell, and that is something that you might want to watch out for. So let's say on this market, you will be selling it for less than the base value, while on the AFCFTA market, you will be selling it for 2% plus profit. You can also buy resources at the market. However, you cannot buy or sell resources within the same market quarter. The market quarter restarts on January, April, July, and October 1st. So for example, you say, okay, I want to buy a lot of aloe because it's so cheap right now. I will go ahead and do that and I will sell it to another market. Okay, you can do that. However, you cannot sell it within the same quarter without there being consequences of market manipulation. You do not want to do that. You can wait until the quarter ends and then try to sell it and try to make that profit. However, just keep in mind that when you buy something, there is a 25% logistics upcharge. So it will cost you 25% more. And then you will have to, once you sell it, you will have to make that difference so you can get a profit. So you will have to buy it for a lot less and sell it for a lot more so that you can make that profit. So keep that in mind if you want to play the market game. Inflation is very important. Like I mentioned before, it determines the cost value of the things you purchase in that province within that nation, but also your maintenance fee. If inflation goes up over time, it will increase your maintenance. 2022 to 2024, inflation is predetermined. Unlike how you generally see inflation, which is comparative to the previous year. For example, 2024, you might see, oh, there's only 8% inflation. And then on 2023, you saw, oh, there's only 8% inflation as well. However, for in the game, you will see that on 2022, there might be 8% inflation. And then on 2023, there will be 18% inflation. Why? Because it is not comparative to the previous year, but it built upon it. All the information that we get regarding inflation is only based on the previous year. That's why sometimes in real life, some people ask, if we only have 8% inflation, how come things are so much more expensive than it was 10 years ago? When 10 years ago, we also had 8% inflation. Well, if you had 8% inflation every year for 10 years, you actually have 80% inflation at present day because it builds up. We could say that, for example, in the United States, during the 1960s, if we use that price as a base from the 60s in the States to present day, there has actually been over 950% inflation. However, we only say, oh, we have 8% inflation because it is based off of the previous year. Now, in that game, everything is based off of end of 2021 and 2022 prices. All the base prices and inflation is based off of that, and it uses that base value because we have to use a base value. And from there on, based on demand that you will have on the market and depending on events, world event demand, that is what will change the prices over time. But inflation itself, there are several things that affect. Like I mentioned before, during 2022 to 2024, it will be predetermined since that is history and that has already happened. After 2024, the inflation will be affected by, first of all, the average demand of key goods in your own market. So we are in Estonia, we are under the EU market. So the demand based on the EU market for agriculture, meat, alcohol, infrastructure, and luxury goods, as well as gas and diesel. Those are the things that will determine or change or affect your inflation, the average cost of those things. If everything is in high demand within your market, then that will cause inflation. The best way that you can help affect inflation without being the ruler of the nation at first is to sell to your own market. If you sell within your own market, it will keep demand low and therefore inflation won't increase as much. There are several other things that does affect inflation, like your national debt. You will be able to find some more information. Key taxation, population. Personal tab is the one that you will most likely want to check out of. The GDP, you will see how much debt they're in. So if debt increases, that will affect inflation in a negative way. The other thing that will affect inflation will be the type of economy you're under. Are you under a developed economy, an emerging economy, or an undeveloped economy? Nations that have a GDP per capita higher than 15,000, which will have a developed economy. Nations that have less than 4,000 GDP per capita on average will have an undeveloped economy. You will be able to help increase the GDP, the gross domestic product value of a nation as you invest within that nation. There are different pros and cons of being under a developed economy versus an undeveloped or an emerging economy. One of them is that at the end of the year, once inflation is figured out, a developed economy will have a better inflation rate based on economy confidence. Undeveloped or an emerging economy will not have the same rate. Also, developed economies have a decrease in birth rate, while an undeveloped economy has an increased birth rate. An emerging economy in the middle. Your economies would also be a factor when you make business agreements and diplomas. Play the game, we will have different events that pop up depending on the time. For example, yes. The game is based on real-life events that happened throughout 2022 to 2024, at the end of 2024, in which they would affect the market. You will have different events that come up throughout your gameplay that inform you of what's happening in the different markets, so that you could check out those markets and see if you want to sell your goods there for a profit. At first, this is the best way that you can build your economy. You build certain resources, then you build upon that industry by building the price of chicken. So you say, okay, I want to profit of that. I will go ahead and buy some poultry and then build some eggs. And then there will be higher tier things that you can build off of eggs. Keep in mind that when you build a resource, the tier 2 and higher resource will use a percentage of the production from the previous tier. You can increase the level of the previous tier resources so that you can also increase their production. Tier 3 resources will require 2 resources for production. Tier 3 will require, in this case, ethanol plus glucose or yeast. This is very important to look into. Why? Because the cost of the resources that you need on higher tiers might be a factor if you want to build into that or not. If you require resources that are very expensive and that you cannot produce, which means that you will have to build it in another nation, that might increase your cost. For example, if you want to build, let's say, dresses, it will require textiles, which we produce, plus cotton, which we do not produce, and we cannot produce within this climate. We cannot produce cotton. So we'll have to go to, so we can say that we go into Libya. They can produce cotton. So what we could do is we can create a business agreement with them. It will cost us 52.25 lakh, which we do not have, and we can start to exploit their resources. However, we do not have the wealth for a business agreement, and we do not have the cotton either. You can build a tier 3 resource. However, that resource, that additional resource which you need, will be out of purchase at 4 times the base value. That will really eat into your profits. You do not want to do that. And especially if you say, okay, I want to buy designer dresses instead, which you will need textile, but also silk apparel. Silk apparel costs a lot more than cotton. It's a tier 2 resource. It's built off of silk. You will find them in a tropical rainforest climate or a tropical savanna climate. So you will have to go through the province and see, okay, maybe they have some silk. Okay, so they have silk here. You will see that the initial cost is much higher. The maintenance cost is much higher as well. This is just silk, and this is just a tier 1 resource. From there on, you have to create an industry for the tier 2, which will be more. And when you don't produce, you will be auto purchasing that needed resource at 4 times the cost. You do not want to be purchasing a resource that you do not have, which is tier 2, at 4 times the cost, because once you produce the dresses and sell it, you will not be getting as much of a profit. That is not ideal, because it will really hurt your profit. You will want to either produce what you need or create a business agreement with a nation and then exploit other nations' resources. The other option as well is that you can go to the market and buy the resource that you need. In this case, you can go on the luxury and find the silk apparel and try to get the best deal that you can find and stock up on what you need. Okay, let's get 10 tons. So we have some in stock, and then we can go ahead and produce the designer dresses if we had the wealth, which we do. This will be the best way in which you can avoid having so much expenses in production. However, there comes a point in which if there's so much demand for a certain good, if all of a sudden silk became really popular or silk apparel became really popular everywhere, if there's high demand everywhere, then the markets won't want to sell you that good. So you will be stuck either selling at a 4 times the cost or you will be happy to produce it. If for some reason your nation goes into hyperinflation, they have a lot of debt, they are in war, they are increasing their military effort, for whatever reason, there is an option in which you can shut down all of your industry within that province by locking them up. Now, no industry that you have will be producing anything, but it will also not cost you anything. If for whatever reason you say it is not profitable to build in this nation anymore, lock all your things up, take the loss, and go and build into another nation or wait it out. Inflation is a big factor. Also, taxes. Taxes will increase the cost of whatever you buy. Resources, investments. The taxes of a nation can be changed over time by law, by bills passed through the politics tab. Here you click on your nation that you want to affect, because you, as you build different business agreements, you will have options into influencing other nations' laws and policies. Now, once you pay, you will see the different options of laws available that you can push for, that it could influence your transportation costs, infrastructure projects, and so on. Now, laws will be passed by the same nation over time. You will see a notification here on the right-hand side on the bottom. If the nation has passed a specific law, they will pass laws based on their political leaning. If they are right-leaning, they will only pass right-leaning related laws. If they are left-leaning, they will only pass left-leaning related laws. If they are an authoritarian nation identified by the green color, then they will only pass the related law. Now, you can push for bills even if you're not in the same leaning by using your influence if you have enough. Once you build up a lot within the nation, influence shown up here by your current influence is what you will use a percentage amount. Let's say require 30% of my influence and so on. You will use that influence so that you can pass specific bills. Higher taxes means that it will increase the cost of the things you purchase. However, that means that the nation will receive more corporate tax revenue, which they can use to do whatever they need to do. Lower taxes, it means that for yourself, it will be cheaper. However, the nation will also get less revenue, which could affect their economic growth. Now, going back to GDP. GDP is what is used to determine your end of the year nation's income tax. GDP is also affected by investment. At the end of the year, all of the investments made, let's say highway project, universities, and so on, all of those investments will be added one time at the end of the year, and from all of that it will be added as GDP for that year, and that is what will be used for your nation's income tax at the end of the year. That's why the previous GDP, it will often look higher than your current GDP because all of the investments were taken into account. You can increase that nation's GDP by simply investing into that nation, going on to higher tiers which produce more. Any investments or leveling up of goods will result in higher GDP for that specific province. At the end of the year, all of the provinces' GDP will be added up to determine the GDP the per capita average for the nation. So let's say you are in an undeveloped economy and you want to help with that. You should invest in your own nation and build higher tier industries in which over time will increase the GDP per province, which will increase the GDP per capita on average at the end of the year. And then that, as time progresses, will increase from a undeveloped to an emerging economy to hopefully a developing economy if you have invested enough. Invested in highway projects or cargo trains, airports, and so on. That will also help with GDP. Income that you get from investments go to the state. You do not receive it as an individual. Okay, so overall, that is some general information on how to get started in Trade Conquest and how the economy works. We covered how to choose a nation by building a tier 1 resource after checking out the different climates and unrest to see what would fit for you, as well as checking out that nation's inflation, because each nation will have their own different inflations and things to deal with. We've covered that it is very important to build the industries that you can support. At first, you will require additional resources going tier 3 onwards. So it is very important to produce what you need. Aside from that, we covered selling your resources at the market, that depending on different events, they can increase in demand. We quickly covered that you can build different buildings that produce research that you can later on use in a research tree based on business, social, and military to give you certain benefits that you can look through. We covered a little bit on the politics tabs and the benefits it can provide you over time. And we covered the Oval Office tab, which can give you some really good information, especially the personals tab when you first start off. And then we also cover some general information regarding taxes and GDP and unrest. So this will be some general information to get you started in Trade Conquest. Thank you for watching.